The documentary is called Stink, and you focus on mainly external products and the harms that they can have to us?
Yeah, I mean, it started because I bought my daughter a pair of pajamas for Christmas, and they had a weird chemical smell. So I called the company. I just wanted to make sure they were safe, and they totally stonewalled me. So I thought, that's strange. Well, why wouldn't they just say, yeah, it's fine, or yes, it's because we are using this chemical, but they wouldn't do that. So I ended up having to send the product to a laboratory, and the documentary was basically this journey that I went on to try to find out, why these chemicals in our products, why everything's such a secret. And I used the pajamas as a metaphor to sort of, explore the entire system. And, without giving too much away, that, the chemicals that if I had known in advance were in the product, I wouldn't have bought the product. And that's the thing, that we're being exposed to these chemicals and we don't even know it.
Yeah, so you kind of thought that they may say, oh, yeah, that smell is from this thing that we put on to serve this certain purpose, and it's going to be completely fine. We've tested it. There's no harm. That's what you expected, but you got stonewalled.
Absolutely. And it's like everything. I mean, basically every product that we sent to a laboratory had chemicals in the product that were not listed on the label, that if we knew that they were in the product, we wouldn't have bought them. And the other problem, I mean, even, especially for young girls, I mean, you're at a critical development stage, pre-puberty, and why would you want to expose them to chemicals that are known to disrupt hormones? And so even if you know about this issue and you call a company, they might tell you, no, that's, is there formaldehyde in this, children's nail polish? No, there's not. And so you're like, all right, then you buy it. But if you send that product to a lab, you'll find out it does have formaldehyde in it, which is a known human carcinogen. And I think that the company, in most instances, they don't even know because there really are no regulations. They're not breaking the law. It's the law that's broken.
We're talking with John Whelan. His film Stink is coming out. It's been in film festivals, and we'll let you know when it comes around Fort Collins or when we can get it from a streaming or a DVD service. So will we learn things that we can avoid in the future to protect ourselves while these products are still on the shelf and there is no transparency? They don't have to label things that are dangerous. Did you learn a way to move through your life in a less dangerous way?
Yeah, I think once you understand the loopholes, I think that you see products or you see your shopping experience through a different lens. And, the good news is that there are companies that are making safer products. I think that, until awareness is a lot greater than it is now, the sort of large conventional companies aren't going to reformulate, because that's what it comes down to. If consumers knew that, a nationally advertised brand had these dodgy chemicals, then the company would reformulate. And sadly, it seems that companies they're not proactive in reformulating until there's an issue. There was an issue a couple of years back with formaldehyde in Johnson & Johnson baby shampoo. So it was in the New York Times. It was all over the media, and people were saying, well, why is there a known carcinogen in baby shampoo? Mm-hmm. And so, 2 months later, Johnson & Johnson said, we're gonna phase out formaldehyde out of baby shampoo. And you're sitting there scratching your head thinking, why is there formaldehyde in baby shampoo? I thought it was an embalming fluid. But again, it's not listed on the label, so it doesn't really raise a red flag when people are in the aisle. But just to answer your question, as a rule of thumb, if a company is not willing to disclose all the ingredients in a product, whether it's a personal care or cleaning product, then I wouldn't buy it. There's a reason they're not disclosing the ingredients.
So is it as simple as this company, this major cosmetics company or personal care product company uses these chemicals, these don't? Or did you start to identify chemicals, and how, is it complicated for us to figure out what's good and what isn't?
It is a little complicated. I mean, a couple of things. One, there's an app, for example, that the Environmental Working Group has. It's a free download. It's called Skin Deep. And so you're in the store, you have a smartphone. Yeah, you look at the barcode of the product, you scan it, and it'll basically give you an analysis of the product and say, okay, this product's pretty good. Here's a couple things you might want to consider, or you might want to, if you're interested in this, here's an even safer product. But I think that, I don't advocate someone, taking an extreme shift in the way they live. It's just that, give the consumer the choice. If someone loves a product and it's not great for them, well, at least that they have that information and they're making the choice. The chemical industry isn't making the choice for them.
Right.
But I think the other thing we're seeing is that retailers that traditionally were perceived as just pushing boxes are now taking a little more responsibility, and they're acting more as curators. So at one side you have a Whole Foods, for example, which actually says, okay, if you sell, let me just make one quick point. In Europe, there's a list of 1,400 chemicals that you're not allowed to use in personal care products. Mm-hmm. But in the United States, that list is 10 chemicals. And so there are multinational corporations that actually have a U.S. formulation of a product and a European version of the product. And, the American version could have much dodgier chemicals. And so Whole Foods, for example, says, all right, even though the U.S. regulations are, very lax, we're going to use something more like the European regulation where they say you can't use these 1,400 chemicals we know are bad. Now, that's there's a sort of a socioeconomic issue here as well that, as you go down the sort of the socioeconomic chain, some of these products that are safer may be more expensive, and that's not really fair because all people should be able to have access to safe products.
Right.
But even, major retailers, Walmart, they're moving in that direction too and saying, look, if you're using these chemicals, we won't sell it. And so, it's kind of like this trend of retail regulation where retailers are taking more responsibility, which I think is great because, a consumer shouldn't have to have a PhD in chemistry to buy a bottle of shampoo. Right. It should be like electricity. It should be like you go and you turn on the light switch. You don't have to worry about what happens behind the wall. People are really busy. And that's why I think that, people should have safer products regardless of your income levels. It's just that all the products should be safe and everything should be disclosed.
So if a retailer like Walmart hops on board, then we can kind of know that if we're going to Walmart, or at least have that feeling, and if we can verify it, we could think, oh, well, of course I'm going to shop at the retailer that I know is going to protect me, at least a little bit more. At least they're thinking about me, and I would go there every time.
Absolutely, and I think that Walmart has a great opportunity. They have so much power that they can say to all their suppliers, look, I don't care what the FDA says. We don't want our customers to have to be exposed to these chemicals. I mean, look, we put a man on the moon in 1968. I think we can make shampoo without carcinogens in 2015. Yeah. And so, they can do that, and they are making progress, which is great. So it's like a lot of times you see things and they're not solvable problems, but this is. But in order for the problem to be solved, there needs to be greater awareness. So that's what I'm hoping to help create more awareness.
Talking with John Whelan. He's the creator of Stink, a documentary about a lot of different things, but basically about how we can look out for ourselves in personal care products and the dangers that some of the things on the shelves may pose. You can go to stinkmovie.com to find more about the movie. And John, I appreciate all your time. I just have a couple more questions if you're okay.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Okay, great. So these are some pretty big, powerful concerns that you were kind of taking on with the movie. Was there much pushback? Anything happen?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely pushback. I mean, the chemical industry, it's a $1 trillion industry. The head lobbyist who I confront in the documentaries, paid an NBA-sized salary to make sure that chemicals are not regulated, make sure that companies don't have to be transparent. And kind of all the companies are hiding behind the chemical industry. I mean, we don't really think of cosmetics companies or cleaning companies as chemical companies, but that's what they are. And the thing is, a lot of people think that chemicals are bad. That's not the case either. There are 85,000 chemicals in commerce in the United States. 85,000. The federal government has only tested a couple hundred of them for safety. So that seems like this overwhelming number, and it is. But most of the chemicals are safe. It's a small percentage. Let's say 1% to 2% of those 85,000 chemicals in commerce are probably the ones we should be most concerned with. But the problem is that the government, with the current laws, federal agencies can't do anything. And, people like to blame the agencies. It's not really the agency's fault. The agencies can only do what Congress allows them to do. And these concerns that you're talking about, they spend hundreds of millions of dollars to influence the political process. And so Congress doesn't do anything, or they do something that looks like it's fixing it, but it's really not. And so, there's a law from 1976 called the Toxic Substances Control Act that regulates chemicals. But if you take something like asbestos, asbestos is unique in that it actually has a signature disease. The only way you can get mesothelioma is from asbestos exposure. And the Environmental Protection Agency tried to ban asbestos, and they couldn't. So if you can't ban asbestos, then you can't ban anything.
Right.
And it's very hard to establish causation. Meaning, if there are 85,000 chemicals in commerce, how are you going to be able to say that this chemical, caused this disease in this person? And because of that, the industry can say, well, you can't be 100% certain that this chemical causes that disease. And so, again, going back to the transparency, because and you could argue about that all day, and that's what I'm saying. That okay, well, fair enough, but transparency is binary. You're either disclosing or you're not. If there's a chemical that causes cancer in a baby shampoo, then disclose it, because give the consumer the choice instead of making the choice for us. And consumers are smart. I mean, just give them the information. I'm not advocating over regulating, but I think that the market will work itself out if these companies are transparent, because in order to have a functioning marketplace, buyer and seller need to have access to the same information. And the fact that the chemical industry and all the companies that sell products with chemicals oppose disclosing all of these different chemicals just makes you wonder, what are they trying to hide? And so what I found out, in basically every case, all the chemicals that they weren't disclosing were chemicals that you don't want in your body.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, we don't need Congress to protect us anyways, because they're not going to. I mean, obviously, there's a process that's in place, and the thing that the chemical company is going to react is not to Congress. They'll just spend more money to change what Congress says. The thing that they'll react to is when we stop buying. As soon as they see their profits drop, as soon as we go, nope, we don't want your stuff anymore, they'll change instantly.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. You're exactly right. We have the buying power, but at the same time, from their perspective, I mean, we're here talking about a problem that most people aren't even aware of.
Yeah.
And so the industries realize that on a large scale, they're not going to be proactive in fixing a problem or solving a problem that most people aren't aware of. But at the same time, they realize that they must see the writing on the wall.
Well, the writing's on the internet, and the internet is coming up on its 20th, 25th, 30th birthday, whatever. And it's just starting to get that. It's just starting to be where what you're creating gives people a language to talk about it. So they've never had this language in their vocabulary before, or this idea in their heads before that, hey, something on the shelf doesn't mean that it's safe. It's almost like this is new information, but the information is now out there and accessible to more than people who will buy a specialty magazine, go to a specialty conference, take a certain class. Like, it's just in your face on Facebook now. Right.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's sort of conventional wisdom. It's kind of hard to change the way someone thinks. And just to give you an example, companies they focus on the product feature in order to, and people don't really think about the risk. Meaning, I'm buying a product that straightens my hair. That's great. That's the feature. But the risk is that the chemical that makes your hair straight causes cancer.
Right.
And so, if you look at a product, this product, I'm buying pajamas for my kid, it says flame resistant. And you want to know, well, is the material itself inherently flame resistant, or are you using a chemical that happens to cause cancer to create the flame resistance? And they don't want you to have that information. And if you ask them, like I said, if you call up, and that's how it started, it says it's flame resistant, can you tell me how the flame resistance is achieved? Like, they don't want you to have information. And so the loophole that I thought was most interesting was fragrance, because fragrance, like, everyone loves a pleasant smell.
Mm-hmm.
And so fragrance has become a condiment for, like, every product category. Everything smells like something now. And so, like, the first thing you do before you buy shampoo, you smell it. You want to make sure it smells good. But so if you look on a product label and you see the word fragrance, so it appears to be a singular ingredient, but it's not. It's used in lieu of disclosing what could be 100 different chemicals. And again, it's positive camouflage. You see on the label a vanilla bean. You think vanilla. It's described as vanilla. It smells like vanilla, but it could be 100 synthetic chemicals that are combined to create something that smells like vanilla. And actually, vanilla is an interesting example because there's something called castoreum oil, which is an oil that's extracted from a sac next to a beaver's anus, and it happens to smell like vanilla. Don't ask me who found that out. But anyway, so if you're looking at vanilla shampoo or vanilla toothpaste, you see it's vanilla toothpaste. You're thinking, oh wow, I love vanilla. Now, and it just says flavor or fragrance on the label. You're thinking it's real vanilla, but it could be a liquid that came from a beaver's anus that's creating your vanilla toothpaste. And now that could be all natural. I'm not saying it's harmful, but it's just, again, it's information.
Wouldn't you rather know?
Should have.
Wouldn't you rather see beaver anus on the ingredient label?
Right.
Yes,
right.
you would.
And so, but it's a function of cost. So if real vanilla costs $100 a pound and the beaver vanilla costs $1 a pound, and they don't have to disclose which is which, what do you think they're going to use?
Yeah.
So I think that disgusting example, I think you can see that because they don't have to disclose, they use the cheapest possible thing that they can get away with. And unfortunately, the cheapest chemicals tend to be the most toxic.
Yep. Great. Well, I really appreciate it because it's hard to elucidate all of this. It's a big picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I'm an optimist, and I see it as a great opportunity for small companies that look at what's going on and say, this is a great opportunity to build safer products. I think there's going to be a renaissance in product formulations and greener chemistry, and again, I think the future is bright. But I think until a lot of people know about this, I don't think these large conventional companies have any incentive to reformulate a 60-year-old formulation.
Right.
Because they'd rather have a wait-and-see attitude.
Yeah, I'm with you on the optimism. I just had a baby, and so I have to feed him one thing and one thing only. So I looked into the formula, didn't like what I saw, and looked for an alternative. And there was one sitting there waiting for me at a very similar price because of the power of the internet.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for everything, I think that, I tell my daughter who's in seventh grade, like, things aren't commodities, meaning I want this lipstick or I want this. It's like, okay, that's fine. Now she knows that, okay, lipstick isn't a commodity. If I want to get this, there's a healthful version of pretty much every product. And again, just the first thing I said, I think once you see stink, you look at things through a different lens. It's not being, there's a healthy form of skepticism. It's like, okay, that's great. I know that I always thought this is great. But maybe there's a better, and especially when you have babies. I mean, it's just, if you're rubbing something on a baby's body and 30 seconds later it's going into their bloodstream, I just think you have a right to know what you're putting in your baby's bloodstream. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, the chemical industry doesn't agree with me. So I think that the average American would agree. It's sort of, what harm does it do to just give us that information so we can choose instead of these companies taking advantage of loopholes and choosing for us?
Well, I would love to support, anything you do in Colorado, or, it'll get to us digitally as well. So we're excited about that because I think it is just a great idea, and I'm excited to see it.
Sounds good. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay.